School. Hi, everybody. This is Alabama Blue School for April 2024, big year. And tonight for our Blue School presentation, we've got Tom Miro again, Executive Director of the Alabama Democratic Party, joining us from Chicago, where he is helping plan the DNC convention. And he's going to be talking to us about prospecting, not for gold, but better than gold, voters and volunteers. So we're going to get to that in a second. I want to really quickly just say who we are and what this is about. Alabama Blue School is a monthly online training session for folks who are doing local democratic organizing. So this is Alabama specific. It's specific to folks who are trying to organize these Democrats here in our wonderful state. So, and this is sponsored by UDECAL, the United Democratic Clubs of Alabama, and we are just a working group of those people. We're just regular folks who volunteer in our own necks of the woods, and we know that we all can have more success with our work if we join forces and if we share information and resources and share a bit of the load with each other. So that's what we're here for. We are recording this, so this will go up on our YouTube channel along with all the other sessions. One more quick thing I want to say before we move on is that we are coming off of UDECAL's other big project, which is Alabama Blue Conference, which was on April 6th at the beginning of this month. And we think it went really great. We had a great time. We had some amazing speakers. Evan Milligan was our keynote. We had Marilyn Lands talk to us. She just fresh off her win in the state house. So we will be doing that next year. And if you are watching this on YouTube and you enjoy it, then we hope that you'll come every month, and we hope you'll come to Alabama Blue Conference in 2025. So without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to Tom. Take it away, Tom.
Absolutely. And another shameless plug for Alabama Blue Conference. What a phenomenal, first entry into that program. I know it's something that you guys have been excited about, have been building toward it. It had been a brainchild of yours for a long time. And so to see it come to fruition and be such an amazing program. So congratulations. Well, I was able to attend and it was awesome. So yes, if you did not go in 2024, please start checking your email for that 2025 invite, because it is a can't miss event. I had an absolute great time. But yes, and you're as Emily said, right? UDECAL and the state party and county parties, they're all organizations that we're trying to work together. We're trying not to reinvent the wheel every time, and we know that there are other folks doing this work with us. And sometimes we can kind of get siloed. We have our label as Democrat, and we work in that field, and it's a great field, right? I got a lot of friends who are Democrats, almost all of them. You know what I mean? So it's good. But when we're starting to talk about building toward success in an election year, especially a presidential year, we're going to need to bring in folks that we don't all that often bring into our standard month-to-month meetings. That's okay. They might come in for this year and they might go back to whatever they do after that. But we need to keep expanding our networks, and we need to keep growing, because that's how we do the kind of work that we need to do to be successful. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what this program is. It's a set of presentations that I'm giving to help us build toward electoral success. There are 6 buckets of preparation that I've talked about before, with going through finance, prospecting, training, ground game, which is the actual canvassing, doing some voter protection work, and then GOTV. But we're talking about all of these month to month in preparation for having a very successful November in Alabama. And I kind of wanted to make sure that we had some time to talk about one of my favorite things, which is prospecting new recruits. It's the best thing in the world, is trying to find more folks to come down to your organizations and your meetings. And we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to prepare for what's going to be a very important election in 2024. Um, so as you can tell with all of those different buckets, these are things that major coordinated campaigns, they don't do these things overnight, and neither should you. We need to be spending just as much time as our paid staff counterparts could be on trying to build this out. Luckily, our organizations don't have an end date. Like we have the flexibility of going beyond an election in November. But that also means that we need to be constantly active and moving forward and trying to build up our networks as best we can. And so, with that in mind, we're going to talk a little bit about prospecting. The teams that we need to succeed are bigger than the ones that come to our monthly meetings. That's okay. It's meant to be that way. But starting to prospect new volunteer and donor leads now will ensure that we have a bullpen of folks who are ready and able to be called on when it's time to start activating and getting folks onto our doors. So and it's hard right now. We need to acknowledge that, we're not in a fortunate place like, well, sometimes unfortunate, in a place like Kentucky or Virginia, where we have these big off-cycle elections, right? 2021, Virginia's going to have a governor's race. 2021, Virginia had a governor's race. 2023, Kentucky had a governor's race. They have things that keep people active and ready to go. We don't have that. So we're going to have to be active participants in our down years and in our up years in order to make sure that we have the people power that we're going to need to be successful. Because these campaigns that come in and are going to ask for our help, they won't be able to hit their goals just by relying on our established networks of folks that come in every time. We're also going to need to expand that and help them out too. So when we think about recruiting new teammates, there are a couple of ways that I like to think about this. And these are places that should all be very friendly and good spots for you to go to. But I've kind of labeled them into three distinct tiers. So the first one should be the easiest of them all, which is the low-hanging fruit. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means. It's a term that we use a lot in like campaign field space and also in campaign finance space. Then we have our allied organizations, and then we have affinity groups. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about low-hanging fruit. And if you guys have any questions, you don't have to hold them into the end, but I'm going to have an ending question space too, so we can talk a little bit more about this because I love talking about this kind of stuff. So like I said, the phrase low-hanging fruit is one that comes up a lot in organizing circles of campaigns. These are folks who we have reason to believe there's some data that exists, might be interested in getting involved with our organizations and to get involved with campaigns in a presidential year. Some of the examples of low-hanging fruit are people who have gone out of their way to try to get involved. Now, I know there's not going to be a lot of folks, right? But if you have a volunteer sign-up button on your county party website, the people who go out of their way to click, yes, I'd like to volunteer, that's a low-hanging fruit. I know nothing about them other than that they decided they saw this button on my webpage and they wanted to click it. That's a great low-hanging fruit. Somebody who's basically just saying, hey, call me. Amazing. But we can start expanding it from there too, right? Like, I know not everybody who follows your local Democratic county party or club's Facebook page comes to every meeting, but we know who they are and we can reach out to them. That's a great low-hanging fruit. They've already gone out of their way to say, I'm interested in following this Democratic organization. Call them up and say, hey, I know you follow us. I haven't seen you at a meeting. Why don't you come on down and meet us? We're great people. If you like the content, come on down and meet the folks behind it, stuff like that. Local student Dems, right? Like really oftentimes, student Dems, especially in college towns, places like Tuscaloosa and places like Auburn, college Dems and the standard county party will remain separate. And yeah, probably in like a 2023 year, that makes a lot of sense, right? They're going to be doing college kid things, but college kid things in 2024 is electing Democrats to the United States House of Representatives or to their local circuit or district court seat. Those are things that they can do, and they are better equipped to do them in concert with their local county party. And it also gets them to peel back the onion and say, what is it going to be like if you want to be an active Democrat once you graduate college? You're only going to be here for 4 years, maybe at the outside 10 if you're getting like a doctorate, going to med school. Great, that's all amazing stuff. But at a certain point, if you want to stay active, you're going to go into a like a full chapter of a local county party. What does that look like? What is that something that you're interested in doing? It helps us peel the onion back, but more importantly, these are folks who are interested in getting involved in democratic politics. They're just maybe not doing it in the same way that we are. Invite them down. Also, college kids love free food, so if you get like a pizza, I guarantee they'll be there. Another great way, it's a little bit less targeted, but it will give you a lot of folks that do not come to your meetings. Folks who pull Democratic primary ballots. This is going to be larger in some places than it is others. It's definitely going to be larger than the number of people who come to every single one of your monthly meetings. That is great. That would represent, if I was building a recruitment tier for a county party, the bedrock of where I was reaching out to, right? At the end of the day, break glass in case of emergency. I know I can pull up a phone bank of folks who pulled a Democratic primary ballot, give them a ring. I probably don't know them. They probably want to know me. So that is a great low-hanging fruit. And that is, again, another instance of somebody who has said, I want to get involved in democratic politics, and I'm going out of my way to do so. You have to pull a partisan primary ballot when you go to the polls here. So that is a great metric to use. It is a surrogate metric that we use a lot of the time for understanding how successful Democrats are versus Republicans in a specific area. So that is a great way to measure. And then finally, and it seems obvious, but we have to remind yourselves, like, become a relational organizer yourself. If you come to your county party meetings and you have a partner, you have kids, you have parents, bring them next time. It sounds silly, but if every single person brings two people with them, you've tripled the amount of folks that have attended your county party meeting over the course of a single month. You know, if you make that assignment, the 20 people that come to every single county party meeting, you're bringing two more folks. They don't have to be somebody that you never met before. They can be related to you, but all of a sudden, the next meeting you have 60. That is an exponential amount of growth. And when you take a picture of that and you put it on your Facebook, all of a sudden people start sitting up, paying attention, going, oh man, they really got something happening over there. Why don't I come down the next time? Great. Like, so these are all the low-hanging fruit. These are, really easy asks, or these are people who have gone out of their way to tell us that they want to get involved in a partisan way. So this is a great place to start your recruitment journey, but it's by no means the way that we need to end it. Next up is allied organizations. Now, as we know, and like I said before, we're not the only folks that are going to be operating in our progressive spaces. And there's a great way for us to bridge a gap, especially in a presidential year, when we know that there's going to be a lot of attention on the electoral side, probably more than advocacy sides. That's okay too. I'm a huge proponent of electoral work being the best advocacy work, because in my personal opinion, unless an elected official has some kind of electoral pressure, they're not going to be interested in making any kind of advocacy change. You know, if I'm calling a Republican elected official who won by 75% of the vote, doesn't matter if I tell him that I don't believe in this thing that he's doing. He doesn't feel the heat. He's not worried. And yes, I'm using he because it's probably going to be he. I'm sorry. We got to say we got to. But for example, if there was a Republican who won in 2022 by 60-40, and then we run against him and we push that, and now it's 53-47. Now when I call and I say I'm a Democrat and I don't believe in what you're saying about this bill, he's not going to put down the phone as easily, right? Because now he's feeling that heat. He's feeling the fact that people are coming for him, and if he wants to keep his job, he can't just hang up on a progressive that calls and advocates for his stuff. But that's a wonderful aside to say that the work that the advocacy folks do is so important, and we need to back them up, and we need to say that the work that you do also has teeth. And with that in mind, we have folks doing that exact kind of stuff that are not always affiliated with our Democratic county parties or even our clubs. Great way to get started is a progressive interest group. A great example of this in the Alabama case would be, if there's a meeting done by Alabama Arise, for example, right? Like they are a nonpartisan C3, they are not affiliated with a party. They believe in progressive values. And I think that the Alabama Democrats also believe in progressive values. They're doing work in the same space as us. They believe in a lot of the same stuff as us. Go out if they're having a local thing and say, hey, hi, I'm Emily, and I'm from the United Democratic Clubs of Alabama. Love you to come on down. Easy as that. Another great spot that sometimes ends up getting siloed, especially when we start talking about our more red areas, is our local ADC chapters, right? Like the Democratic Conference is the Independent Black Caucus here in Alabama. So they are not affiliated with the party. But they are a progressive organization, and they are a very robust organizational infrastructure statewide. And they'll have members that you can reach out to too and say, hey, it would be really awesome if you all want to come down to the party as well. That's a really easy sell, in my opinion. And it's also like an existing network of folks so that you can just plug straight into and have a new set of folks that you can call on to come down to your party or to your club. And then finally, labor unions, right? Almost the epitome of organization. Your local labor unions are going to have roles of rank and file members, active members. They'll have a business manager and a political manager who are all interested in getting their folks activated. Now they're going to be moving, and they'll all have different ways that they're going to be moving in an election year because unions are massive players in the political space. But doesn't mean that we can't recruit from them. It's definitely worth a shout. Something that I do all the time is I email unions and I say, hey, I see you have a monthly meeting. Can I jump on and just introduce myself? It's an important thing to do. Swing by and say hi. It's also great because demographically, unions don't represent a great demographic for Democrats in this state. A lot of cis straight white men there who are progressive. Like that is somebody that we have a need for those folks in this party. So that's a great tool to get out there and say, hey, you're interested in workers' rights, so am I. Cool. Come on down to our party next time. So those are organizations. Those are the far more, politically minded, active organizations. But we also have affinity groups too, right? Because we're not just all about organization. We also have beliefs and we have causes. We have things that are important to us too. And there are organizations around those that we can tap into as well. So let's talk a little bit about affinity groups. Because just because an organization isn't outwardly partisan, it doesn't mean that their members aren't interested in getting involved with us. Affinity groups are a great way to tap into parts of our community who we'd like to get involved with our party. And this is a great opportunity. We talked about the ADC as the Independent Black Caucus, but that is an outwardly political entity. Now, our NAACP chapters also exceedingly organized and are generally not as political. That is still a great place to tap into to say, hey, would you have any folks who would be interested in coming down to our meeting to learn a little bit more about what we are doing? Obviously, LGBTQIA plus organizations are going to be a great opportunity for Democratic organizations to tap in and say, hey, we have a home for you here. If you're interested in getting involved in politics, we think that we're the party for you. Hispanic and Latino community organizations. These can be a little more difficult, right? Because the Hispanic and Latino community, for the most part, in a broad generalization, like tends to be like very like at least religiously conservative. But they also tend to be very, very solid Democrats. when they go to the polls too. So I think that is a great shout to tap in there to see if you have any folks from the Hispanic or Latino community who might be interested in getting involved with your party. A huge one in Alabama is local environmental advocacy organizations. Alabama is one of the most biodiverse states in the entire union. And we have a lot of folks who are interested in protecting our wildlife habitats and our natural environment. That's a great place to get started because we are the party that's interested in, renewable energy, and we're in combating climate change. And there are a lot of people people who are surprisingly conservative who are also interested in doing that exact same thing. It's a great way to bring folks in, widen our net, and hang our hat on a policy that a lot of folks on both sides of the aisle can kind of get behind, especially here. And then of course, local tribes and bands of Native Americans. This is a great shout as well, because at least in Arizona, the coordinated campaign did a lot of work with the Navajo Indians, and ended up getting to a point where I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe the single strongest demographic that voted for Joe Biden in 2020 was a Navajo Indian. I think it was 99% to 1%. It was statistically impossible, but I remember when they were coming out with the numbers and they were just like running up higher and higher. It was astonishing. But like Native Americans are a great resource in expanding our networks, because they also have like a very in-depth organization themselves. It matters to them who's part of their tribe or their band, and they'll be able to point you in the right direction for folks that you need to reach out to there too. So I think that those are all amazing affinity groups, of folks who get together, organized, maybe not outwardly politically, but who definitely have a better home here than any other political organization, in my opinion, in the state. Um, but so okay, so great. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just quickly before you move on. In 2024 in Alabama, some affinity groups you might want to look out for are library protection groups and
Yes.
reproductive rights groups.
Yep. Yep.
There, there's a lot of potential, there's a lot of energy there right now and potential for
Absolutely.
coalitions.
Absolutely. And there are so many more that I couldn't add, right? Like Mom's Demand is a great non-political entity that happens to be coalescing with us on a very specific issue. There are so many organizations there that you can tap into, but libraries are a great option, especially for county parties, because there's going to be essentially by how we divide up our library jurisdictions, you'll have advocacy organizations for your library in basically every single county, which is great. Makes it like a good one-to-one analogous measure for you. But absolutely. And then of course reproductive rights, those affinity groups around them have been absolutely skyrocketing since 2022, but in Alabama especially since in the past few months, reasonably so. So those are also great places to reach out and as we said, add some electoral pressure to that advocacy pressure that they're all about. And yeah, so we've identified our recruitment pools. Now what? Okay, so we've picked out a set of folks that we want to bring into our organization, but we need to actually invite them. Well, there are a couple ways we can do that, right? But the best ones are going to be direct appeals, and there are a couple of different ways that we can make those direct appeals. The first one, the thing that I'm the biggest fan of, recruitment calls. I love dialing, or tabling, which is I think a little bit lower barrier of entry. But it can also be equally as effective, right? And so much of it comes down to personality, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we start talking about training and things like that. But regardless, let's talk about getting those signups. All right, so recruitment calls. Making recruitment calls and getting commitments to attend meetings over the phone is, in my opinion, job one. This has got to be something that happens. I know for a lot of people, I don't know if you could tell I was a little facetious. I'm actually not, I don't really like dials all that much. Um, but it's a necessary evil, guys. We've got to get on the phone. We've got to call somebody. We've got to ask them to do something for us. It stinks. It's no fun. But if we do it together, it can be a lot of fun. Um, but it's the best way to bring in a new blood, right? The best way to do this, in my opinion, is to use Vote Builder. It has the ability to run something called a virtual phone bank, which is a very useful tool because you can have a bunch of people log into it and nobody's getting the same number twice, and you're able to record data specific to that individual voter that you attempted. It's wonderful. And then, of course, but I've also made dials on campaigns, on major campaigns, off of Excel sheets too, right? Say we have a more specific list that we need to talk about. Say a union passed on their membership list, and exists for them in an Excel file because that's how it's useful to them. Like we don't need to like change that at all. Just divvy up the list, make some calls. Make a copy of it, color a quadrant in one color, another color for another quadrant, another color, and assign people different colored quadrants. You're dialing from top to bottom in green. I'm dialing from bottom to top in green. Just doing everything that we can to make sure that we're reaching out to folks. But those direct appeals matter for a number of different reasons. One, it gets us a bunch of different attempts, right? Like if we're trying to make an attempt like at tabling and somebody walks away from us, we're probably not going to get them back there at that same event, right? Like maybe they'll pass by, but we'll get a bunch of different attempts at a phone number, and we can attempt them from different phone numbers. We can attempt them at different times of day. We can be creative about a phone call, and we can be solutions oriented with a phone call to try to figure out how we can be as successful as possible. And then it's just about making the appeal and asking them to come down, get that commitment, and then follow up with them later to confirm their commitment. Um, if we, a rule of thumb in campaigns is that if you get somebody to sign up, they have a 50% chance of showing up, right? I get somebody to say yes one time, great, 50-50. If I call them again a couple days before the event, just say, hey, just wanted to make sure you had all the details. If I hit them with a confirm call, their chances of going up jump to 75, 80%. Now you have diminishing returns after that, right? If you confirm somebody 3 times, we'll get to 85%, 4 times, 87. You're never going to get somebody to show up 100% of the time. That's just insane. You can't hold yourself to that standard either. But making sure that we get those commitments, those hard commitments, and then following up on them to confirm attendance, so important to make sure that we're building up our networks. But also we can table, right? We don't have to just make our appeals over the phone. And I think it would be a bad idea to just do appeals over the phone, especially with community organizations, right? Because in a lot of the places that you exist in, being a Democrat is not the most exciting thing. Like people are a little wary, right? It's like, I can think of, Bibb County probably is not super easy to be a Democrat in Bibb County, not the easiest place to be progressive. But you are there, if you're a Bibb County resident and people know you and you go to church there and you do your grocery shopping there, and if you table as you, who's also a Democrat, that demystifies the party a bit. They've done a good job of scaring folks about both big and little d Democrats. But messaging can't scare folks away from you if they already know you. And that's the beauty of tabling, is it puts a face to the name. It's also an opportunity when we go to these allied organizations and these affinity groups of walking our walk and not just talking our talk. It's an opportunity to show solidarity. It's an opportunity to flex our organization on their behalf too. Even if it's one person and a folding card table and a couple of buttons and signs, we went there and we didn't have to, and that matters to people. That something that they remember. And if you go to your very small, very rural, very red Pride event and you wear your Democrat stuff, folks will remember that. That'll mean a lot to that community. So tabling is a great way to get out there. Again, like I said, demystify these things, and it's an amazing recruitment tool. As long as we're making sure that we're capturing that data. If the folks who come by our table are putting their name, address, phone number, email address, all that stuff down on our sign-in sheet, and we're keeping that, we're entering that somewhere where it's safe from the environment, fantastic. So important. But we got to keep track of that data. We can't just have all these smiles and handshakes and go back and say, well, I met all these really great people. I have no idea who they are, and I can't talk to them again. That's not going to work. We need to make sure that we're keeping track of those folks. But yeah, so I've talked a little bit about affinity groups, and talked a little bit about how we're going to reach out to them. Can you guys think of any other ways or groups? I know Emily, you came off me to tell me a little bit about a couple of affinity groups that I didn't mention there. Are there any other groups that you can think of that we might be interested in reaching out to, or ways that we can reach out to them that I didn't talk about? I know I only said dials and tabling, but are there any other things that you can think of? And you could just anybody if they want to share. I would like to hear. I always love comparing notes, and y'all have been where you are longer than I have. So
Marcia, did you
Yeah,
unmute yourself? Go.
I'm not muted, I don't think. Um, One of the things that we did more of last year and the year before were community service projects, food drives, clothing drives, personal hygiene drives, in conjunction with our local, kind of service organizations to low income and homeless people. So that was good, a good way to get into the community. And it never failed that somebody would stop, drive by, and go, "There are Democrats in Shelby County." So I think that's a way to
yep.
get out in the community without waiting for there to be somebody else's event. So
Yes. No, that's great. And I was lucky enough to be able to swing by Shelby County's back to school supply drive in 2023. And it's a fantastic opportunity too, right? Like you don't have to rely on other community organizations to do these nonpartisan, great goodwill projects. And that's a fantastic one. And you're absolutely right about visibility, Marcia. Like there are a lot of places where people are like, oh, I didn't even know that you guys were here. It's like, yeah, we've been here the whole time. But it's also important to then when we get those, take that, sometimes those can feel a little double-edged swords, right? It was like, well, we're working really hard. So, but take it with a smile. Oh, of course we're here. We're so happy to see you. Come on down. We have a meeting next week or whatever. So but yeah, no, it's those kinds of programs are really great, Marcia. Mr. Richard.
Yeah, just going along with what Marcia said, we always annually do a food giveaway of some type. I think the last couple of years we've been giving away like sweet potatoes, actually, like big bags.
Right.
And most of the time, most of the people that show up are Republicans, and they see us out there and they see our signs. So those are good things. And we've got people that never would show up to a Democratic thing that show up afterwards. So, and then we have a lot of our Democratic members that volunteer at the local food bank that actually are handing out food and stuff. So that's one thing we do. And then attend all the festivals and events that we can in the area. So
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that one thing that's it ends up being a universal language, right, is we all got to eat, so food-based events are always a really, really good way to build community. It's a great way to bring folks in. Crawfish boils, always good. Yeah, well, maybe not so good for me. I'm allergic to shellfish, but yeah, in principle, like a thing like a crawfish boil, or like if you have, I know Marion County does a chili cook-off or a chili dinner. Great opportunity. So many folks will come out to that. One, they want to try some good chili, and they'll see that there are folks in their community who are Democrats who aren't scary and evil. Yeah, Marsha.
Right now, food giveaways seem like a really cool thing because there's a lot of upheaval about the governor and the legislature not wanting to do the federal summer food program.
That's right. That's
So
right.
just from a issues perspective, food giveaways and food, that's why we're doing our latest food drive is specifically to be able to talk about uh, the Alabama government's lack of desire to feed children. So,
Yeah.
it's sort of a political thing too. So it's the timing is really good for those kinds of things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's exactly right. And it's like just because we are doing these, these goodwill events doesn't mean that we don't use them to reflect our values, right? It's a good opportunity to say we're doing this food drive because it's the right thing to do and because your elected officials aren't doing it, and you have the opportunity to change that if you want to, come on down and learn more about how we're trying to get that done. It's a great sell, especially with something that's so universally loved and praised, right? Like, Republican and Democrat kids are going to be missing out on summer school lunches. That doesn't have a partisan bent to it. It's just going to hurt kids, and that's no good for anybody. But programming around that is a great way to remind folks that while we are serving the community, we are also on the right side of these policy issues too, which is very important. Yeah, great ideas, everybody. Those are all fantastic. Shout out to the food oriented stuff. I'm getting hungry. But luckily I've got my sweet bag of Gardettos waiting for me after this. So at the end of the day, you guys, there's no one size fits all solution to recruitment. And that's okay. You're going to have to mix and match strategies because not every county party is in the same place. Not every county party wants to end up in the exact same place. The reality looks different for every single one of us, right? There are so many differences in our county party structures, right? Like Jefferson County and Walker County, even though they're very close geographically, couldn't be further apart. That's okay. That's okay. But that means that the strategies that work in Jefferson County might not necessarily work in Walker County. But mixing and matching, figuring out what combination of affinity groups, allied organizations, low-hanging fruit, tabling, phone calls, whatever combination of those works for you, that's the most important thing. And as long as you're feeling successful, as long as you're bringing new folks in, and as long as your members are feeling empowered, that's really all that matters at the end of the day. We want that metric of new folks coming in, but we also want to make sure that the folks who come in every single month feel empowered that they're making this change themselves, that they're taking ownership of growing their club, because the club wouldn't exist without them either. So, with all that to say, are there any other questions about recruitment, about prospecting, about anything like that? Strategies, tips, tricks, things that have worked for me. I've had really great success with Mom's Demand chapters. One of my best volunteers in Kansas was a Mom's Demand thing. It was the head of her Mom's Demand chapter. She was a rock star. Shout out to Shannon. If you're watching, Shannon, you kick ass. No, I'm just kidding. Any other questions like that?
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you have any advice or tips about sort of the ask? So how to make the ask, what's a good first ask? How do you tell when to sort of ease up? I get that wrong a lot of the time. And
Sure. Yeah.
what are your tips and tricks?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a tool that every single organizer is taught when they're coming up through campaigns, and it's called a hard ask. It's used in sales all the time. And we need to be conscious with what exactly we're trying to get out of a hard ask, which is we're trying to eliminate the opportunities to be told no. That's all it is. So it's structuring a request from a volunteer in a way that makes it harder for them to say no to you than yes. because that's what we want at the end of the day, right? Like, and in campaigns, trying to get them to say yes to something pretty difficult. Going out and knocking doors, that's an action. That's a lot harder than coming down to a watch party on election night, or coming down to a meeting to meet some new people and having stuff like that. So what you're asking for is a low bar ask, but you'll still want to practice your hard ask anyway. And essentially what a hard ask is instead of creating a question where the opportunity is to say yes or no, we want to give them options between one time and one day, or one action and another action, right? So if I'm making an ask, and you'll do hard asks even in person too, right? But we do a lot of them on the phone. But let's just say I'm tabling at an LGBTQIA event, and I meet somebody who's spending a lot of time talking to me about a Democrat. They say that they're a Democrat, they've never been before. And I want to get them to come out to one of our events. And I've got 2 events that I can offer them. I've got pizza night, where we're going to, I don't know, watch Joe Biden and Donald Trump debate each other. Sure. And then we've got, yeah, I wouldn't want to see that either. Just I'd be muting the TV half the time. And then we've got just our regular county party meeting. So if I was going to hard ask that person to come down and attend one of my events, I would say this person's name is Jason. So Jason, I've had so much time, so much fun talking to you about Democrats, and I know you're interested in getting involved. We've got a pizza party where we're going to watch the debate, and then we've got our monthly meeting. Both of them are next week. One's on Tuesday, one's on Thursday. Which of those works better for you? So I've now made that question not if this person wants to come, but they are coming. Which one of the 2 events are they gonna attend? You know, so that's a hard ask. One, there's some elements that you're gonna want to, and when you're talking about events like a canvas, you're usually gonna have multiple shifts. So that's usually where I make my hard ask. Is we're knocking doors. Let's say I'm calling an Auburn voter to get them to come down and volunteer for a district court judge. It's so important that we're electing as many of our judges as possible. One, it has a long-term impact. We're electing these folks for 6 years, and I know that you're interested in making sure that you can have that kind of change over the next 6 years. We're knocking doors on behalf of this candidate that I really, really believe in. So between Saturday and Sunday, which of those works better for you to come down and make sure that you're hitting the doors with us and having those important face-to-face conversations? We're eliminating the ability for them to say no by giving them options. But every hard ask also has a good element of urgency too, right? We want to be able to let them know that what they're doing is making a difference. And that saying yes now and coming in is better than waiting till later. Now, you're going to get laters all the time, right? And when it comes to making these asks in September and October, we get to turn those laters, and we get to be really, really kind of passive aggressive about it. But if somebody says like, oh, I'll get involved later in the campaign, when we call them up in September and October, we're like, well, later's now, so either you're getting involved or you're not. So those are the options at this stage. Later's now. So let's start talking about it. But yes, a hard ask essentially is structuring the way that you ask somebody to get involved in a way that eliminates their opportunities for exits, knowing all the time that if somebody really can't make it, they're actually just going to say no anyway, right? This is a psychological tool. This is not a manipulative tool, because like if I actually have a dentist appointment on Saturday, and then I have my kids' soccer practice on Sunday, when you ask me between Saturday and Sunday which is better for you, I'll say neither of those. Actually, I've got a dentist appointment, and then I've got to take my kids to soccer practice. If I have real excuses, those will come very easy to me. If it's just like, oh, I don't want to, it's like, well, then making this ask a little bit more tough is how we get you to take that next step and, get a commitment. And then once we get that commitment, we follow up. And when we follow up with our confirmation call, where we take the person who said yes already and make sure that they can still make it, we are going to be aggressively what is it? How do I want to phrase this? They've already told you yes. You're not asking them if they can come again, right? They already made that hard commitment to you. You wouldn't have said that they're a yes for this event if they didn't say yes, I will be there. So when we're confirming them, we're going to say, hey, I just want to make sure you had all the details. I don't want to ask if they can still come. Of course they can still come. Do you have all the details? Do you know the address? Do you know what time it's going to be? Are you going to bring, if it's a canvas, are you going to bring friends? Are you going to bring water? Amazing. Thanks so much. We'll see you then. Get off the phone before they can tell you no. That's a good confirm too. So we have a bunch of different strategies and ways that we can talk about this kind of stuff to make sure that every conversation we're having, we're getting the most out of. Mostly because a phrase that I used to say all the time to my organizers when they were doing the recruitment calls, when we were letting a lot of our contacts, as you guys know, when you phone bank, right? You make 100 dials and you'll talk to 10 people. It's just the nature of the beast. It stinks. It eats up a lot of time. That's just how it goes. But I was looking through our data, and I was seeing that we were getting a fair amount of contacts. Like we were talking to people, we were entering data in, but we weren't getting yeses to shifts. And so I had to sit down with my organizers and I said, we have no idea when we're going to talk to this person again, right? We don't know if we caught them on a good day when they could pick up their phone. We don't know if, there'll be a family emergency the next time we try to call them. We don't know what the situation is because they're a whole human being living a whole life outside of the one conversation that we have. So every time I talk to this person might be the last time I talk to this person before election day. So I can't sit here and think about, I'll get them next time. No, I got to get them now. Because if I get them now, then I will talk to them again. Then they'll have my number in their phone. Then they'll have come to an event. They'll have met me. They'll have fallen in love with me, and they'll want to keep coming back to our events. That is what it's all about. But every opportunity that I have, every contact that I have with a voter it might be the last time I ever speak to them. So I want to make sure that I'm giving it my best ask when I get them on the phone. Yeah, Richard. Yeah, Richard, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I was just going to say about the different events and stuff that we could participate in with affinity groups and things. It's like during the festival season, like Marion County has Mule Day. So we will go in half with them and share the expense of the booth and setting up and the registration fees. And like other groups, like let's say the NAACP, if they have a voter registration or something, we'd like to be there too, just to be seen and have a table as well. So
sure, yeah,
even the ADC, whatever any other group is doing, if you're there just to support them, you're going to get people from your area that will be more receptive to attending your meetings and events. So
exactly right.
I just
And
wanted to add that.
no, that's a great shout, right? And because these are organizations that exist outside of us and will continue to exist outside of us, have a lot of the same interests, but might not have the same members. And that's great. That is a great opportunity to, not only broaden your network out, but like also, live out our values, which is so important too, right? It's like that's what makes us who we are, is the things that we do are things that are reflective of what we believe. And getting involved with those organizations, that's reflective of who we are. So yeah. But yeah, I would love to do an organizer onboarding at some point with you guys, because that would be the most fun. Training organizers is my favorite thing that I've ever done in my whole life. I love training people to be organizers. So and we could go through all sorts of different things about, like, what a hard ask is, how to do a waterfall ask, which is where we ask through the yeses. We get more out of folks, because once somebody says yes to us, they're going to want to start saying yes more. How we ask through the no's, how we have somebody who's like just not giving us what we need, but we want to get them to a yes to something, because once we get that yes, then they're going to say yes more. Like we have all of these skills to teach you guys about the best ways to knock doors, how fast you got to go. Most people spend way too much time waiting for somebody to answer the door. You don't need to be doing that. That's just a little hint for you guys. But I would love to do all of that stuff to you for y'all. It's one of my favorite things to do. But at the end of the day, if you have any other questions about these skills that organizers put to work every single day to make sure that they're successful in what they do, always happy to answer them. And if you do have any questions, here's how to reach me. It's my email address, my phone number. That's my actual cell phone number. So if you call it, probably maybe the YouTube doesn't need it. No, I'm just kidding. That's fine.
This is
No,
getting published on YouTube.
oh God, no. But no, you guys feel free to reach out to me. You know, I'm paid staff here, right? I'm paid to help out. That's what I do. So if you have any questions, please feel free to probably text me before so I know what it's about. Helps with some context, but I'd be happy to answer your questions anytime. But other than that, Miss Emily, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Tom. Let's all do the Zoom. Thanks so much. Round of applause. Voguing. Thanks so much. This is great. And this is such a great opportunity for us to learn from a professional. And then we're going to marry that with our knowledge of our own communities. And when that comes together, I think we're going to see some magical things happen. We already are.
That's right. And that's what I used to say when I've worked in a number of different states as a staffer, right? Virginia, Kentucky, Kansas, Arizona. And that's what I always said to them, right? Is like, I will never in the 6 months that I'm here know your area better than you will. But what I can do is teach you how to be a really good organizer, and you apply that how it best works for Shawnee County, Kansas, right? Like that's I don't know Shawnee County, Kansas, but y'all do, and I know how to organize. Let's between those two things we can make something happen, right? And we sure did. Because we won Shawnee County for Laura Kelly in 2022. Thank you very much.
Nice. Nice.
But yes.
Thanks. This is a wealth of information, and we're going to keep going. And next month's is going to be next month's session is training. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
So you're going to talk to us about how we can train our volunteers to be effective. Once we've prospected all of these people, now we're going to put them out.
Train them up.
Okay.
That's right. Perfect.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. And we'll see you next month.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.